lunar phases and the eclipses. Lunar phases. They are patterns, and hopefully you saw those patterns while doing your lunar observations or your moon observations, and you should have noticed, hopefully, that the light, if you were to look from the new moon to the full moon, you should notice that the light would increase from the right and grow larger in an area of reflection until you get to the full moon, which that whole face of the moon is reflecting sunlight down onto Earth. And then from the full moon to the new moon, you should notice that the light is, or the reflection of sunlight is receding from the right. So the lighted portion is getting smaller on the left. And remember that the moon revolves counterclockwise, and it takes about 29.5 days for the moon to complete one revolution. And the moon's orbit is at a tilt to Earth's orbit, which is why we do not have a solar and lunar eclipse every month. They have to become in line with one another, and that takes several cycles before it can happen. Lunar phases misconceptions. The word misconception is a misidea or misinformation that you might have learned and you sort of still believe even though you may have the evidence to prove otherwise. So there are two misconceptions for what causes the lunar phases and why we see those different shapes throughout a lunar month. Some misconceptions, people believe that clouds block part of what we see of the moon, so we only see maybe a tiny sliver for a crescent, or we only see half of a moon for the third quarter, or that it is Earth's shadow. However, shadows do not come into play for lunar phases. And you can see on this slide that I've crossed both of those out because they are not part of what causes the lunar phases. The causes of the lunar phases is the moon's position in relation to Earth and Sun. So where our moon is in its orbit around the Earth, that is sort of going to give us what we see, or our perspective from Earth, looking up at the moon and what it's reflecting. And then the sun is going to always see a full moon because that sunlight is always going to be reflected back as a full moon phase to Earth. So again, what causes the lunar phases is the moon's position in its orbit in relation to Earth. And you can see that on these two diagrams. Here it's showing you where the moon is in its position in its orbit around the Earth. And then over here on this diagram, it is showing you what we would see from Earth. So if you look here at position 1, this is the new moon phase. So we wouldn't see a moon because the side that's reflecting sunlight is just facing towards the sun. And then the moon revolves counterclockwise this way. And then we would sort of see the lighted portion growing from the right all the way to a full moon, which is position 5. And then the lighted portion would decrease from the right all the way back to a new moon. The new moon and the full moon are the two phases that you need to either be able to label or draw. This slide wants you to look at this phase of the moon and then draw on your note sheet what you would see tomorrow night and the night after that. You may want to look at the previous slide to help you with this in order to draw the correct phases. So you would be drawing them tomorrow night and then what it would look like the night after that. So you're going to want to take a few minutes, look at the previous slide, pause the video, and draw what you think you would see tomorrow night and the night after if the moon was this phase tonight. We will discuss these answers in class. Lunar phases. So answer this question. Why don't we see a solar and lunar eclipse once a month? Eclipses. It's just when an object in space is casting a shadow on another object. So it could be any objects as long as they are able to block light. Then they can make an eclipse. So a solar eclipse is when the moon's shadow is cast on the daytime side of Earth, and since the moon is about 1/6 the size of Earth, the shadow area is very small, and you have to be within that shadow area to witness a solar eclipse. A a lot of people in the United States will be able to experience one this August in 2017. There is a short band that I think goes from around Seattle, Washington, all the way down to the Carolinas. So, unfortunately, in New England, we won't be able to see it. But again, the shadow is much smaller during a solar eclipse. A lunar eclipse is when the Earth's shadow is cast on the moon, and everybody on the nighttime side of Earth can witness a lunar eclipse. And a lunar eclipse, you can watch actually every phase that the moon would go through during a lunar month. You can witness it in several hours. They are really pretty to see, so be on the lookout for lunar eclipses. Many of the ones I've witnessed are in the winter, and they're late at night, so it's pretty cold watching them, but it is really nice to see. So again, that's the nighttime side of Earth that can witness the lunar eclipse. Here's the answer to the question on why we do not have solar and lunar eclipses once a month. So please read through this, make sure you understand it. If you have any questions, please make sure you bring those to class with you.